The rain fell like bullets in the darkness, each drop striking the pavement with the sound of a tiny gunshot. Thunder rolled across Los Angeles, and the city's underbelly trembled. Dominic Russo knelt on the wet concrete outside Isabella, the most exclusive Italian restaurant in the city, and his hand shook. His $7,000 suit, tailored in Milan 3 months ago, soaked through completely. Water dripped from his dark hair, now matted against his forehead. His eyes, the color of storm clouds, were frozen on the woman bleeding into the rain. The gunshots still echoed off the brick walls. 4. The sound hung in the humid air like a curse that could not be erased. Behind him, Carlo and Enzo stood paralyzed, their guns drawn, their faces the color of ash. In 15 years of working for Dominic Russo, they had never seen him on his knees. Not once. Not for any reason. But here he was, kneeling in a downpour like a man soothing a lost child, his powerful body bent over a stranger's bleeding form. His mother stood against the restaurant wall, alive and untouched, staring at the woman who had just saved her life. Isabella Winters lay on the pavement with 4 bullets in her body. Her thrift store dress, the color of faded roses, was now the color of blood. Her shoulder jerked once more as the last of her strength fled. Her eyes, still open, still conscious, still searching for understanding, fixed on Dominic's face above her. She did not scream. She did not beg. She simply lay there, bleeding, and whispered something so quiet that only he could hear it. "Is your mother safe?" That was what she asked. Not about her own wounds. Not about her own survival. About the safety of a stranger. Dominic's jaw clenched so hard his teeth nearly cracked. Something cold and dangerous stirred in his chest, something he had not felt in 30 years of building an empire on vengeance and violence. Something that made him feel more powerful and more helpless all at once. The gunmen vanished into the storm, their footsteps fading into the noise of the rain. Sirens wailed in the distance, still 3 minutes away, maybe 4. Carlo knelt beside Dominic, his phone already in his hand, calling for the private ambulance, the one that asked no questions and filed no police reports. "Sir, we need to move," Carlo said, his voice trembling like a candle in the wind. "The police will be here in." "No," Dominic said. And that single word, spoken like thunder, silenced everyone. "You stay with her. You call my doctor. You call St. Mary's. You tell them the best surgical team in this city will be waiting when she arrives. You tell them that if she dies, everyone involved dies. Do you understand me?" Carlo nodded, his face pale. He had never heard Dominic speak like this. Never. The boss did not save people. The boss destroyed them. The boss did not kneel in the rain for anyone. But here he was, removing his $7,000 coat and draping it across Isabella's shoulders, his cashmere spreading around her like a shield worth more than a year of her old salary. Her eyes began to close. The rain pounded harder, as if the sky itself was crying. "Stay with me," Dominic commanded, and his voice cracked like broken glass. "Look at me. Stay with me. You hear? You do not get to close your eyes. Not yet." But what Isabella did not know, what she could not have known as her vision narrowed to a tunnel, was that the man kneeling beside her would hunt her through every hospital in Los Angeles. That he would find her. That he would move heaven and earth to keep her alive. That the most dangerous man in the city, the man with 30 bodies on his conscience, would become completely undone by a woman with nothing but courage and a thrift store dress. The private ambulance pulled up, its lights dark, its arrival silent. They lifted her carefully, so carefully, onto the stretcher. Dominic watched every second of it. His mother reached for his arm, whispering his name, but he did not turn. He could not turn. His eyes never left Isabella's face as they loaded her into the vehicle. "She is going to live," he said to no one and everyone. "She is going to live, and I am going to find out why." The rain continued to fall. The storm continued to rage. And in that moment, something shifted in the criminal underworld of Los Angeles. A debt had been created. A life had been saved. And the man who had spent 3 decades building power through destruction was about to learn that the greatest power of all was something he had never allowed himself to possess. Protection. Real protection. The kind that required love. The ambulance disappeared into the darkness. Enzo turned to Carlo, his face unreadable. What just happened? Carlo shook his head slowly. Something none of us will ever recover from, he whispered. Now, let us go back to the beginning. Let us go back 16 hours earlier, when Isabella Winters woke up in a space so small it could barely be called a room. When she had $200 to her name and exactly 12 days until the life she had fought so hard to build shattered completely. The alarm on her phone buzzed at 4:47 in the morning. For 47. Not for 45. Not 5 o'clock. For 47, because she had set it precisely so she could squeeze in an extra hour at the diner before she had to be at the Langford house by 6 o'clock to wake their daughter, Lily. Isabella rolled over on the thin foam mattress, her back cracking like old wood. The converted closet where she slept measured 6 feet by 8 feet. It had been a linen closet once, before the Langfords decided to rent it out. Now it was hers. The walls were painted a hospital white. A small window, barred for security, looked out onto an alley where dumpsters overflowed with garbage bags. She sat up slowly, her entire body aching in ways she had learned not to complain about. Her hands were calloused, the nails broken and stained with dishwater. Her left arm bore the faint outline of last month's bruises, now faded to the color of old bruises, memories of Derek that would not quite leave her skin. The eviction notice hung on her wall, framed like a portrait of her own failure. 12 days. 12 days until the Langford's landlord evicted her for non-payment of rent that had somehow become her responsibility instead of theirs. The notice was printed in red ink, as if the color itself could scream louder than words. $22,000. That was what she owed. $22,000 in 12 days, or she lost this room, this job, and her custody of Lily. Isabella reached under her mattress and pulled out a cloth wallet worn thin as paper. She opened it slowly. $200 in cash. She counted it twice, then a third time, as if the number might change through repetition. It did not. $200. And the week's groceries had to come from that. And the bus fare to work. And the new uniform the diner had demanded after Derek had shown up last week, drunk and screaming, tearing her clothes in the kitchen during the breakfast rush. The diner manager had told her to come back in a new uniform or not come back at all. She pulled on the uniform she had worn yesterday, now stiff and wrinkled, and tied her hair back in a braid. Her reflection in the small mirror showed a woman who looked much older than 27. Exhaustion had carved lines around her eyes. Her skin was pale from the hours inside, away from sunlight, always working, always moving, never resting. The clock read 5:10. She had to be out of this room in 5 minutes. Isabella grabbed her work bag, the cloth one with a broken strap that she had tied together with a shoelace, and stepped out into the hallway of the Langford house. The place was silent. The Langfords themselves still slept in their master bedroom upstairs, in their Egyptian cotton sheets, in their temperature-controlled room with blackout curtains. Isabella had cleaned that room this morning before going to sleep, 4 hours of sleep, total, and she had felt the softness of their pillows and known she would never experience that. Lily's door was closed. Isabella could see light under the crack, which meant the 6-year-old was already awake, which meant she was probably scared, which meant Isabella needed to go to work and make money and come back and make everything okay again. But she had to work first. 16 hours a day was the only way to survive in this city. Diner until 10 in the morning, then cleaning houses from 11 until 4, then back to the Langford house to care for Lily from 4 until 8, then she would clean the diner again at night, falling into bed at midnight, waking up 4 hours and 47 minutes later to do it all again. This was the rhythm of her life. This was what she had been doing for 3 years. This was the only way she could keep a roof over her head and keep her daughter close. Except now she was about to lose the roof. And she had no idea how to keep the daughter. The eviction notice said she had 12 days. 12 days, in red ink, like a countdown to the end of everything she had ever wanted. Isabella locked her room carefully. Derek had his ways, and even in a house like this, in a wealthy neighborhood, she did not trust that he would not find her, and made her way down to the kitchen. She left a note on the counter for Lily, a drawing she had made of them together, holding hands, with the words "Mommy will be back soon. Be brave" written in pencil underneath. She did not have money for breakfast. She had not eaten since yesterday afternoon. But there was a thermos in the diner's kitchen, and sometimes, if she was lucky, she could get coffee without anyone noticing. The rain had not started yet as she walked to the bus stop. It was still dark, still humid, and the streets of Los Angeles smelled like oil and asphalt and the ghost of hope that had not yet died completely. She got on the bus. It was crowded even at 5:30 in the morning, full of other people like her, people working 2, 3, for jobs, people with eviction notices of their own, people with bruises they had learned not to explain. No one made eye contact. Everyone was too tired. The diner was called Mel's, and it had been in the same location for 40 years. The parking lot had potholes. The sign had one letter missing. The waitresses' uniforms were synthetic and uncomfortable, and the owner, a man named Gary who had never once smiled, paid them minimum wage and took any excuse to dock their pay. Isabella tied her apron and clocked in. 5:43 in the morning. Her hands moved on autopilot, familiar with the motions of pouring coffee, delivering orders, smiling at customers even though her face hurt from smiling. The morning rush began at 6. Truckers. Construction workers. The occasional businessman checking his phone while his food went cold. Isabella moved between tables like a ghost, quiet, inefficient and invisible. This was what she had become. Nobody. Just a pair of hands, a voice that took orders, a body that could be replaced within the day. The clock on the wall read 8:15 when Derek walked in. He was dressed in a black suit that was expensive but wrong on him, the fabric straining across his shoulders, the tie loose and stained with what might have been coffee or might have been something worse. His face was unshaven, his eyes the color of something rotting, and the scar on his left temple, a scar from the night he had hurt her badly enough that the hospital had asked questions, was the color of infected flesh. Isabella's entire body went absolutely still. Derek scanned the diner, his eyes moving from table to table with the methodical attention of a hunter. When he found her, he smiled. It was not a smile that belonged on a human face. He walked toward her table, his footsteps loud in the diner, and every other customer suddenly became very interested in their eggs and bacon and coffee. "Hello, baby," Derek said, his voice like venom dripped into honey. "Miss me?" The studio apartment at 4:23 in the morning was silent except for Isabella Winters' breathing. She lay on a mattress on the floor, her body curled around a pillow that had lost its shape months ago, and her eyes were already open. They had been open for an hour. Sleep had stopped coming to her somewhere around the time Derek had found her address. The eviction notice was pinned to the wall in red ink, impossible to miss, impossible to ignore. 12 days. That number had become her entire world. 12 days to find $22,000, 12 days before the landlord changed the locks, 12 days before the apartment that had taken her 3 years to secure would evaporate like everything else she had ever tried to hold. She sat up slowly. Her neck ached. Everything ached. A handprint was still visible on her throat, fading from purple to sick yellow, and she wore a scarf even in this heat because the Langfords did not ask questions about bruises, but they also did not want to see them. Isabella reached for her phone. 4:17 in the morning. The screen showed a notification from her bank. Her balance, $203. She had not checked it in 2 days, hoping the number would somehow transform itself into something survivable. It had not. The rent was due in 12 days. The security deposit was gone, spent on Lily's fever 3 months ago when Sophie Langford had said she would repay her and then had forgotten. The money Isabella had saved for emergencies had become the emergency fund for everyone except herself. She stood. Her legs were stiff. The studio apartment was so small that she could stand in the center and touch both walls if she stretched her arms. One window faced an alley. The air conditioning had not worked in 6 weeks. Summer heat pressed against the glass like something alive and hostile. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, still hiding. Isabella's hands began to shake. She deleted it. She did this whenever Derek sent a message, deleted it immediately, as if the words could burn her if she kept them long enough to read. But she had already read it. Her brain had already processed the threat, already sent the signal through her body that danger was close, that nowhere was safe, that Derek had nothing but time and a certainty that she would eventually have to stop running. The Brentwood mansion was 3 miles away. Isabella had exactly 120 minutes to shower, to cover the bruises, to transform herself into the person the Langfords paid barely above minimum wage to raise their daughter while they spent weekends in Malibu and attended parties in Pacific Palisades. She turned on the shower. The water was lukewarm, never quite hot. She stood under it and let it run over her face, over the bruises on her ribs that Derek had made with his fists while she tried to protect her stomach, over the marks on her wrists from when she had tried to push him away. The water did not wash any of it away. Nothing washed anything away anymore. By 5:47, Isabella was climbing the marble steps of the Langford estate. The house was colonial, white, for stories, situated on 2 acres of manicured lawn that the family had inherited rather than earned. The front door alone was worth more than everything Isabella owned. She used her key at the service entrance and moved through the kitchen toward the back stairs. Lily's room was on the 2nd floor, down a hallway lined with photographs of Sophie Langford's childhood, her wedding, her achievements. Nothing of her daughter. Nothing of the person who had raised that daughter. Isabella knocked softly. There was no answer. She opened the door. Lily Langford was already awake, sitting on her bed in her pink pajamas, her dark hair tangled, her 7-year-old face serious in the way that children's faces become serious when they have learned not to expect much. "Good morning, sweet girl," Isabella said, and the exhaustion in her voice disappeared. It was a trick she had learned, compartmentalize the fear, the pain, the desperation into a box somewhere behind her ribs, and let only tenderness come out when Lily was watching. Lily ran to her. "You came back." "Of course I came back. I always come back." The child wrapped her arms around Isabella's neck and held on like Isabella might disappear if she let go. This was what Lily had learned in 7 years of living with parents who were always leaving, mothers and fathers who existed primarily as silhouettes in doorways, voices on phones, figures saying goodbye. "Did you sleep?" Isabella asked, leading her to the bathroom, running water for her bath. "I had the dream again. The one with the colors." "Yes. But this time you were in it. And you didn't leave. You stayed." Isabella felt something crack open in her chest. She had no right to make promises she could not keep. In 12 days, she might not be anywhere to stay. But she said, "I am here now. That is what matters." At 7:15, Sophie Langford swept into the kitchen wearing a cream-colored outfit that probably cost $3,000. It was the kind of outfit that women wore when they had never worked a job where they could not afford to ruin their clothes. Everything about Sophie was expensive and new and dismissive, the way she looked at Isabella without actually seeing her, the way her voice carried the assumption that the world existed to accommodate her preferences. "Bella," Sophie said, not looking up from her phone, "Lily's piano teacher is coming today at 4. Make sure you pay her. I will reimburse you next month." She said this with absolute certainty, as if Isabella had money to spare, as if the words "next month" were not a promise Sophie had made 4 months ago and somehow forgotten. "Of course," Isabella said. She had $200. The piano teacher charged $80. That left her $120 for food, for gas, for anything else that might break or fail before her next paycheck. Lily appeared in the doorway, already dressed for school. She ran to her mother. Sophie was texting. She did not look up. Lily waited for a moment, then came to Isabella instead, took her hand, and said, "Ready." The car ride to school took 17 minutes through Los Angeles traffic. Lily talked about her art project. She was making a collage about colors. "Colors for happy days," she said. And colors for sad days. When you feel sad, you look at the color and remember that sad days don't last forever. Isabella kept her eyes on the road. Outside the window, the city scrolled past, expensive homes, expensive cars, people rushing toward expensive lives. She was not part of any of it. She moved through this world like a ghost, invisible, replaceable, barely real. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 days before her rent was due, Isabella received a phone call. The landlord. He had found another tenant. Someone who could pay in full, no excuses. Isabella had until Friday to vacate. Not 12 days. 3 days. She pulled into the Whole Foods parking lot and sat in the car for 22 minutes. She did not cry. Crying was a luxury she could not afford. Instead, she made a list in her mind, call the police about Derek, they would do nothing, apply for emergency housing assistance, it took weeks or months, find another apartment, all of them required deposits she did not have, take Lily and disappear, and then Derek would know she was running and would hunt her harder. Every option led to the same ending, she would lose Lily. Derek wanted her back. The Langfords would not protect her, they did not know her well enough to protect her. And once she was homeless, once she had no address, no stability, no way to prove she was anything but a drifter, the courts would rule that Derek, with his connections and his money and his family's name, was the better option. The piano teacher came at 4. Isabella paid her $80. $140 remained. She had 2 hours before the Langfords came home. The summer heat was oppressive by evening, the sky a heavy grey, the humidity so thick it felt like drowning. At 6:47, Lily asked if they could walk through the city, if they could see the fancy lights that twinkled at night. Isabella said yes. She always said yes to Lily. The apartment was gone anyway. She could spend this time doing one thing that made her daughter happy. They parked downtown and walked toward the restaurant district. Isabella was an Italian place, the windows full of candles, the kind of restaurant that Isabella would never eat in, that people like her observed from the outside. The street was busy. Street performers played guitars and violins. A man made chalk art on the sidewalk. Lily stopped to watch, delighted by the colors, lost in the way children become lost in small beauties. Isabella turned to check the street. That was when she saw the elderly woman step out of Isabella. She was in her 70s, elegant, wearing a navy dress and pearls and the kind of composure that came from a lifetime of never having to worry about money. Behind her, 3 men in dark jackets closed in with the precision of people who had done this before. Their hands moved simultaneously toward concealed weapons. The moment stretched. Isabella saw the calculation in the men's eyes, the target they had locked on, the way they had already decided that this woman was worth killing. She saw Lily watching the street performer, still lost in color and light, unaware that violence was 3 feet away. Isabella moved. She did not think. She pushed Lily behind a concrete planter with enough force to knock the child to safety, and she stepped toward the elderly woman and positioned herself between the stranger and the guns. "Get down!" Isabella screamed. The first shot cracked the air like thunder. It burned through her shoulder, tore through muscle and bone and blood. The second shot caught her in the abdomen, doubled her over, but she stayed standing, still between the woman and the men, still blocking. The third and fourth shots came fast, one after the other. The third caught her in the hip. The fourth pierced her thigh. She fell. The pavement came up to meet her. Her mouth tasted copper and pain and something deeper, the taste of her own blood. Rain began to fall. Hard. Sudden. Lightning cracked the sky open. Through the rain and the shock and the agony, Isabella saw a man in an $8,000 charcoal suit materialize from the shadows of the restaurant, his face a mask of absolute horror. His eyes were dark, penetrating, the color of a storm about to break. Scars ran along his left temple like a map of violence. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and he moved with the deliberate control of someone who had learned to make the world obey him. Behind him, 2 more men appeared, and the 3 attackers scattered like animals before a predator. The man in the expensive suit knelt beside Isabella. He did not touch her. He just looked at her, at the blood spreading across the pavement, mixing with rain, and something in his face shifted from horror into something else entirely. Something like recognition. The rain fell harder. Sirens wailed in the distance. And Isabella Winters, who had been invisible her entire life, who had been nobody and expected nothing else, found herself the center of a man's complete and undivided attention, a man whose presence alone had scattered armed assassins like they were nothing at all. His voice came soft and deep, like thunder wrapped in velvet. "Ambulance is coming. Stay with me. Do not close your eyes." But Isabella's eyes were already fading toward darkness, and the last thing she heard before unconsciousness took her was the sound of Lily screaming, and a man's voice, cold, furious, absolute, saying to his lieutenants, "Find out who she is. Find out everything. And find the men who did this." The machines beeped in steady rhythm, tracking a heartbeat that almost stopped. Isabella Winters lay in the hospital bed at Cedars-Sinai, her left lung still healing from the collapse, her ribs wrapped tight in bandages that made each breath a negotiation with pain. The private suite on the 4th floor smelled of antiseptic and the white roses that filled 3 separate vases, Carlo's orders, though Dominic had approved every detail. Rain continued to fall outside the window, a 3-day storm that showed no mercy to the city below. It was 3:38 in the morning when Isabella's eyes opened. The pain came first, sharp and unforgiving, running through her torso like fire. Then confusion. Then, slowly, the memory of it all. The gunshots. The pavement. Blood mixing with rain. A man's voice like thunder saying her name, though she had never told him her name. She tried to sit up. The forecourt, pinching her arm. Her throat was dry, her mouth tasting like copper and sleep medication. A monitor beat faster as her heart rate climbed. She looked down and saw bandages covering her ribs, her shoulder, her thigh where the 4th bullet had torn through. 4 bullets. She remembered the count clearly, 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one meant for someone else. A nurse appeared within seconds, as if she had been waiting just outside the door. Young, kind-faced, wearing scrubs with cartoon characters on them that seemed obscene in this place of serious things. "You're awake," the nurse said, adjusting the 4 drip with practiced efficiency. "How is the pain?" "On a scale of 1 to 10. Isabella's voice came out shattered. 11. The nurse smiled sadly and increased the morphine. Within minutes, the edges of the pain softened into a dull, manageable ache. Isabella's mind, however, sharpened with terrible clarity. "How much does this cost?" she asked. The nurse hesitated. That hesitation told Isabella everything. "The surgery alone was $47,000, the nurse said quietly. "You've been here 5 days. The total bill, with the private room, is probably $70,000 by now." But she held up a hand before Isabella could spiral. "It's been paid. All of it. An anonymous donor covered everything the moment you came through the emergency room." The room tilted. $70,000. Isabella made $14,000 a year. $70,000 was 5 years of her life, handed to a stranger in the span of an ambulance ride. She tried to get out of bed, actually managed to swing her legs over the side before the pain reminded her that moving was a luxury she could not afford. She ripped the 4 from her arm. Blood beaded on her pale skin. "I need to leave," she whispered. "I need to find Lily. I need to call the apartment. I need." The world swayed. Her vision went gray at the edges. She was collapsing when a hand caught her, strong and steady, and lowered her back to the bed. The man in the doorway was Dominic Russo. He wore an open-collar white shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, expensive trousers, Italian leather shoes that cost more than Isabella's first month's rent. His dark hair was tousled as though he had not slept in days. He had not. A scar ran down his left temple, silver-white and deliberate, the mark of a man who had survived things that killed other people. His eyes were storm gray, holding hers with an intensity that made her want to look away and never look away simultaneously. "You saved my mother," he said simply. His voice was deep and solid like an oath. Now let me help you. Isabella's eye, the one that was not swollen shut, filled with tears. I don't even know who you are. Dominic Russo, he said. He pulled the chair beside her bed closer and Saturday. And you are not leaving this hospital until you can walk without bleeding. She wanted to argue. She had no right to accept this. She was nobody, just a night shift nanny who made minimum wage and slept in a converted closet and had never in her life been worth $70,000 to anyone. But as she looked at his face, at the way he was looking at her, not with pity, but with something that looked almost like recognition, her voice would not obey her. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you," and then she was gone again, pulled back into the dark. By morning, the real nightmare began. Isabella's phone, recovered from the scene, had 47 missed calls. Every single one from Derek. She discovered this when she woke to find Dominic sitting in the same chair, her phone in his hands, his expression carved from stone. He was listening to one of the voicemails, and his jaw was working in a way that made the muscles in his neck stand out like cords of steel. "Delete them," Isabella said immediately. "Please." "Delete all of them." Dominic did not move. The voicemail played on speaker, Derek's voice thick with rage and alcohol. "You think you can just run? You think you can leave me? You belong to me, Isabella. You are mine. And if you don't come home, if you don't give me back what you owe me, I'm going to find that little girl you care about so much and—" Dominic's hand closed into a fist so tight his knuckles went white. He ended the call. Carlo stood in the doorway, reading the room with the precision of a man trained to sense danger. "Want me to handle it, boss?" "Not yet," Dominic said quietly. His voice had changed. It was still deep, still controlled, but underneath it ran something dark and cold like a knife through ice. "I want to know everything about her first." Within an hour, Enzo placed a folder on Dominic's lap. Isabella Winters. 28 years old. No living family. Employed as a live-in nanny for the Langford family at $750 a week, paid cash, no benefits, no contract. An eviction notice dated 9 days ago, demanding $22,000 or vacate the premises. Bank balance, $214. No credit, no car, no collateral of any kind. Derek Collins, 31, construction worker, arrested 4 times for assault, charges mysteriously dropped each time. His cousin Marcus Collins was a sergeant in the Lapt. Derek had been parked outside Cedars-Sinai for 2 days straight. Dominic read the folder twice. Something in his chest that had already cracked began to split wider, the kind of fracture that would never fully close. 3 days later, Isabella could sit up without collapsing. She had one eye open again, the other still swollen into a purple-yellow crescent. The swelling came from Derek's fist 5 days before the shooting, though Dominic did not know that yet. Her throat still bore the ghost of handprints, his fingers, tight enough to cut off breath, tight enough to make her see stars. She wore the hospital gown they had given her because her own clothes had been cut away in the emergency room, and this gown, too big and too thin, kept sliding off her shoulder where the first bullet had entered. Dominic sat in the chair beside her bed. He had barely left this room. His men brought him coffee that he did not drink, brought him reports that he barely read. His empire ran without him because his empire was built on fear, and fear does not require a king present to maintain order. "Why are you doing this?" Isabella asked. Her voice had strength in it now, though still quiet. "The money, the hospital, staying here. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Rain drummed against the window. A monitor beeped softly, tracking the healing of her heart. "Because you are the only person in 15 years, he said finally, who has done something for my family without wanting something in return." Isabella laughed, and the sound was bitter. She winced immediately, clutching her ribs. "I didn't know who your mother was. I just saw guns and a woman about to die. I didn't do some noble thing. I just moved." "Yes," Dominic said. "Exactly that." He reached out. Isabella went very still. His hand was large, scarred, the hand of a man who had held violence and learned to love it. He adjusted the hospital gown where it had slipped, careful not to touch her skin, revealing the entry wound, neat, small, obscene in its simplicity. A hole where a bullet had torn through her. In the hallway, Carlo whispered to Enzo, "In 15 years of working for him, I have never seen him like this." That night, Isabella told him pieces of her story in fragmented sentences, as though each truth cost her something to speak aloud. Lily Langford was 7 years old. Isabella had been Lily's nanny for 3 years. She changed her clothes, packed her lunch, braided her hair, sat with her through nightmares. The Langfords treated Isabella like furniture, useful, present, utterly invisible. Sophie Langford was another creature entirely. Sophie moved through the world like she owned it. She had money that came from her father's real estate empire, money that gave her permission to be cruel and call it candor. Sophie had taken to mentioning Isabella's debts casually, as though they were conversation. The piano teacher, $1,200. The dry cleaning Isabella ruined, $375. The medical bills from before, when Isabella had been hospitalized after Derek's first serious assault, Sophie had somehow decided these were Isabella's responsibility too. The eviction notice sat on Isabella's lap. She held it like it might burn her. 9 days left. $22,000 she did not have. $200 that was literally all she possessed in the world. "Derek," Dominic said. His voice was careful now, dangerous with control. "Tell me about Derek." Isabella looked away. "He used to be okay. When we were together, the first year was normal. Then he started to change. Possessive. He didn't want me to have friends. He didn't want me leaving the apartment without telling him where. Then he started to hit me and say it was my fault, that if I just listened better, did what he asked, he wouldn't have to do it. I left him after he put me in the hospital the first time. I was only there one night. He told the doctor I fell down the stairs." Dominic stood and walked to the window. His hands were shaking, which they never did. He had fired guns while under sniper fire with steadier hands than these. "Why does he follow you?" His voice came out quiet, which was somehow worse than if he had shouted. "Because he says I belong to him," Isabella whispered. "Because I left without permission. Because to Derek, I am not a person. I am a possession that walked away." Dominic did not turn around. "The eviction notice. Is that the only thing standing between you and safety?" She nodded, though he was not looking at her. "If I could find a new apartment, somewhere Derek doesn't know about, I could take Lily on weekends, help her, be there for her, but—" "It is handled," Dominic said. Isabella's voice rose. "No. I can't accept that. I won't be someone's charity case. I don't even know you. I have no way to repay you." He turned then. The scar on his temple seemed to glow in the fluorescent light. When he sat back down, his voice was softer than Carlo had ever heard it in 15 years. "You threw yourself in front of bullets for a woman you had never met. Let someone do something for you without conditions. Let me be the kind of man who does good things not because he has to, but because someone he cares about needs it done." She cried then. Silent tears that ran down her bruised face while he sat beside her and did not look away. The world changed on the evening of day 5 when Sophie Langford appeared at the hospital, Lily in tow. Lily ran to Isabella's bed and climbed up carefully, as if Isabella were made of glass. She was 7 but looked younger somehow, thin-limbed and pale, with eyes that had seen too much adult anger for such a small face. She buried her face in Isabella's shoulder, careful of the bandages, and whispered, "Please don't go back there, Bella. Mommy's mean to you." Sophie stood in the doorway wearing designer clothes and a poisoned smile. "Isabella, darling," she said, her voice like honey over broken glass. "I'm so glad you're alive, but we really do need you back. Lily has been absolutely impossible without you." Then, quieter, looking directly at Isabella, "Also, you owe me $1,200 for the piano teacher and the dry cleaning you ruined last month. I'll need that by Friday." Isabella's face went white. Dominic rose to his full height. Sophie noticed him for the first time, 6'3", shoulders that filled doorways, the kind of presence that made people understand viscerally what it meant to be mortal. She extended her hand. "I'm Sophie Langford, and you are?" "Leaving," Dominic said. Carlo appeared in the doorway and gestured toward the exit. Sophie's smile faltered. "Well," she tried, but her voice had lost its edge. "Isabella, we'll expect you back by Monday. Lily needs you." She left. A nurse appeared moments later and gently took Lily to another room where toys and coloring books waited. Alone again, Dominic asked, "How long have they treated you like this?" 3 years, Isabella said. His response was final, "You are not going back to that house." "I don't have a choice," Isabella countered. "I need the job. I need the money. I need—" "You have more choices than you know," Dominic said. But what Isabella did not know was that Dominic was already making calls. Sophie Langford's world was collapsing in real time, and she had no idea the earthquake had just begun. That night, Enzo brought the full report. Derek Collins, 31 years old, worked construction, had been arrested for assault 4 times, charges dismissed every time because his cousin Marcus Collins wore a badge and buried the paperwork. Derek had accumulated $17,000 in unpaid debts to various people. He had been parked outside the hospital for 58 hours straight. His last eviction was for non-payment of rent. He owned a gun, legally registered, but had been arrested trying to use it as a threat during an argument with his landlord. "You are protecting her," Carlo said. It was not a question. Dominic did not answer. His silence said everything that needed to be said. Then Derek called. Isabella's phone, which Dominic held, buzzed in his hand. He answered on the second ring. Derek's voice came through the speaker, thick with alcohol and rage, and made every man in the room go absolutely still. "Tell that bitch she has 3 days to come home or I'm taking Lily. I got a lawyer. I got a case. I'm taking that kid, and Isabella's never gonna see her again. Tell her I said so." The line went dead. Dominic's expression became something ancient and lethal. Carlo exchanged a look with Enzo that said what they all understood in that moment: the real violence was about to begin. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and despair. Dawn had not yet broken when Isabella's eyes opened, the machines beeping their steady, indifferent rhythm around her. Her abdomen throbbed where the 3rd bullet had torn through muscle and hope. The bandages wrapped around her ribs felt like a cage. She tried to sit up. The pain was a blade through her entire body, and she gasped, falling back onto the pillow. Enzo stood in the corner, watching her with the patient stillness of a man trained to wait. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that had seen violence and chosen to deliver it. His dark suit was immaculate despite the 12-hour vigil. "Where is he?" Isabella whispered. Her voice sounded like something broken. "The boss is handling matters," Enzo said. He did not elaborate. "I need my phone." Enzo crossed the room in 3 measured steps and placed the phone in her trembling hand. She scrolled through the devastation. 47 missed calls from Derek. A text sent at 4:33 in the morning, "You think you can hide behind rich men? I'm coming for you. And I'm coming for that little girl." Isabella's hand shook so violently she nearly dropped the phone. The room tilted. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, each movement agony, and stood on legs that did not want to hold her. Enzo moved to help. "No," she said. "No, I have to go." Someone had brought her clothes. Simple jeans. A shirt that was not hers, still carrying the faint perfume of someone else's life. She dressed in a fever, every movement sending lightning through her torso. Enzo watched but did not interfere. He had been given his orders, and they did not include stopping her from walking. By 6:22 in the morning, the rain still fell in sheets across Los Angeles, the summer storm refusing to break. Isabella stood outside her studio apartment building, her eviction notice fluttering in the wind like a red banner of surrender. The notice read 12 days remaining. The lock had been changed. She had nowhere to go. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through the void of her contact list. No family. No friend she could burden with this catastrophe. Just Derek's 47 calls and the Langford's number, which burned in her mind like a wound. She thought about calling Sophie, begging for her job back, accepting the insults, the stolen paychecks, the daily humiliation of being treated like a servant who should be grateful for scraps. At least she could see Lily. At least she could be near the only person in the world who loved her. $200 in her pocket. $22,000 she would never have. A foreclosure notice that had already been served. Derek's promise to take Lily, his cousin's badge protecting him, the police refusing to listen, the courts that would side with a biological father over a nanny with nothing to her name. The bridge was 3 miles from here. She had calculated that much. She knew the height. She knew it would be quick. She knew that only a 7-year-old girl would miss her, and that girl deserved better than a broken nanny who could not even protect herself. Her finger hovered over Sophie's number. Then she saw it. A black sedan parked across the street, wipers moving steadily against the downpour. Through the rain-streaked window, Derek's face emerged from the darkness like a nightmare made flesh. He smiled. His smile was a predator's smile. Her blood turned to ice. She ran. Pain screamed through her abdomen where the third bullet had torn through, but she ran anyway, limping through alleyways, hearing his footsteps behind her, wet and heavy and closing the distance. She collapsed behind a dumpster, hands pressed to her bleeding side, breathing in the stench of garbage and rot and the metallic taste of blood. This is how it ends, she thought. Alone. Behind a dumpster. Still running. Then headlights flooded the alley like the gates of heaven opening. A black SUV, then another. 12 men in black tactical gear moved through the rain like ghosts, their movements synchronized and absolute. Carlo's voice cut through the storm, Isabella Winters. She could not speak. She could only nod. Boss sent us. You are safe now. Derek rounded the corner at that exact moment, saw the armed men, and his face crumbled into panic. He tried to run. Enzo moved faster than thought itself, grabbing Derek by the collar and slamming him against the brick wall with enough force to crack the mortar. Derek's head snapped back. Blood dripped from his nose. I didn't, she's my girlfriend, this is a misunderstanding, Derek stammered, his voice shattered into pieces. Enzo's response was delivered like a hammer, tell it to the boss. 1 hour later, the industrial district's warehouse stood dark against the pre-dawn grey. Derek Collins sat zip-tied to a metal chair, soaking wet, trembling like a cornered animal caught in a trap it could not escape. His left eye was swollen shut. His breathing came in ragged gasps. Dominic Russo sat across from him in an identical chair, utterly calm, utterly composed. His black suit showed no wrinkles. His hands rested on his thighs. His eyes, storm grey, penetrating, ancient, fixed on Derek with the intensity of a blade-catching light. Isabella was in the SUV outside with a medic rebandaging her wounds. She did not see this. She did not know that Dominic was speaking in a voice so quiet that Derek had to strain to hear. You put your hands on her 14 times, Dominic said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath. You broke 3 ribs. Fractured her wrist. Left scars on her back like a roadmap of your cruelty. Derek tried to interrupt. Dominic continued as if the man had not made a sound. You stalked her for 7 months. You broke into her apartment. You threatened a 7-year-old child. You promised to take her away from the only person who has ever loved her. Dominic leaned forward, and Derek flinched. The police did nothing because your cousin buries the reports. Because corrupt men protect corrupt men. Because in this city, there are 2 kinds of justice. The kind you pay for, and the kind you deserve. Derek's voice cracked like ancient ice. She's mine, you don't understand, I love her. She is not yours, Dominic said. His response was immediate, final, like a knife through water. She is not anyone's property. She is not an object to be claimed or controlled or threatened. And you will never see her again. Derek collapsed forward, sobs racking his body. His whole frame shook with the desperation of a man watching his entire world collapse into dust. Dominic stood. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Death is too quick. Too easy. Too merciful for what you have done. You are going to federal prison for 40 years, Derek. Assault. Stalking. Conspiracy. Violation of a protective order. My attorneys have been collecting evidence for 5 days. Every hospital record. Every police report filed and ignored. Every witness statement. All of it is going to the district attorney. Derek screamed. The sound echoed through the warehouse like something dying. Your cousin Marcus. Dominic continued. The FBI is raiding his house at dawn. Every report he buried. Every woman he silenced. Every favor he sold for cash. All of it is going to internal affairs. He will spend the next 15 to 20 years in a federal prison, and he will spend every single day remembering that he could have helped, and he chose not to. 2 men in dark suits stepped forward and began unzipping the restraints. Derek did not try to run. He simply collapsed, all resistance burned away, leaving only a shell of a man. Dominic did not watch him be dragged away. He walked toward the door where Isabella waited, and his expression shifted, not softness exactly, but something close. Something that made his lieutenants exchange glances that said they had never seen this version of their boss before. At that same hour, Sophie Langford's phone rang at 7:23 in the morning. The caller ID read Richard Langford. Her husband's voice came through thick with panic and gunfire sounds in the background, not actual gunfire, but the sounds of federal agents moving through their mansion. Sophie, they're taking everything. Bank accounts. Frozen. The company, they're saying money laundering, they're saying racketeering, they're saying, his voice broke. Sophie heard the words but could not process them. The Langfords' dealings with the Marchetti remnants, their investment in illegal operations, their complicity in organized crime that had seemed so far away, so safely disconnected from their wealthy life in the hills, all of it was unraveling in real time. Federal agents appeared at her door at 7:31. The news cameras rolled. Her mugshot would be taken at 8:02. Her assets would be frozen by noon. Lily would be placed in emergency foster care by 2 in the afternoon, marked as a child in crisis whose legal guardian was under investigation. Dominic had orchestrated systematic destruction. Not death. Not violence. Something far more devastating, the systematic dismantling of everything they owned, everything they were, everything they believed protected them. In 5 days, he had turned their empire into ash. The warehouse's interior was dim when Isabella was brought inside. Dominic stood by the window, watching the rain, his silhouette sharp and lonely against the grey light. When he turned to face her, something in his expression shifted, relaxed slightly, as if a burden had been placed down. Derek Collins will spend the next 40 years in federal prison, he said. Your former boyfriend will never see you again. He will never see Lily again. This threat, in all of its forms, is gone. Isabella sank into a chair. Her legs would not hold her anymore. The Langfords, she whispered. Also handled. Richard and Sophie Langford are under federal investigation. Their company is being dismantled. Their assets are frozen. Their daughter, Lily, is currently in temporary foster care. Child Services will contact you about legal guardianship within 48 hours. If you want her, she is yours. Isabella stared at him, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what had just been accomplished. One man. One phone call. One decision. Why? The word came out barely audible. Dominic crouched in front of her until their eyes were level. He was close enough that she could see the scar running from his temple to his cheekbone, the faint silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, the intensity in his storm-gray eyes that seemed to burn with everything he had been carrying. Because you took 4 bullets meant for my mother, he said. Because you have spent 3 years raising a child who is not yours, despite having nothing. Despite being hunted. Despite every reason to run. Because you are the bravest person I have ever met, and I have met killers. She started crying then. Not silent tears, but the kind of sobs that come from 3 years of holding everything together alone. She collapsed forward, and for the first time, she allowed herself to accept comfort. Dominic reached out, let her fall against him, his hand steady on her back. In the corner, Carlo and Enzo exchanged a look neither had seen in 15 years. Their boss, the most dangerous man in Los Angeles, was holding a broken woman gently. His eyes were closed. His jaw was clenched. But his hand was tender. What Isabella did not know was that she had already written him a letter. 3 pages, tucked inside her jacket pocket, planning to disappear after this moment, to vanish so completely that he could never be connected to her, never be destroyed by her chaos. The letter was written in her careful script, confessing everything she felt, everything she could not say aloud. And before the night ended, Dominic would find it. Dominic Russo sits alone in his penthouse study at 2:19 in the morning, the Los Angeles skyline spreading beneath him like a dark ocean dotted with dying lights. The letter is in his hands. He has read it 17 times. His hands shake on the 18th reading, and in 15 years of ruling this city with an iron will, he has never allowed his hands to shake. The paper is creased from being folded and refolded. Her handwriting is careful, deliberate, the penmanship of someone who was taught to be invisible, to take up no space, to apologize for existing. Every word is a blade through his chest. She was planning to leave while he slept. She was planning to disappear completely, to vanish so thoroughly that he could never be connected to her, never be destroyed by the chaos of her life. He walks to the window. Below, the rain falls steady and cold, drumming against the glass like a heartbeat that will not stop. Outside, the city sleeps. Inside, the most dangerous man in Los Angeles discovers that he is terrified. Not of rival families. Not of betrayal or death or the federal agents who have been trying to bring him down for a decade. He is terrified of waking up tomorrow and finding her gone. 6 months earlier, Isabella Winters was counting coins on the linoleum floor of a converted closet at 6:23 in the morning. $17.38. The light came through a single window the size of a showbox, and she arranged the coins in careful stacks while Lily slept on a mattress that was technically Sophie Langford's guest room overflow but had become Isabella's entire world. The eviction notice hung on the wall in red ink, each number a small death. 12 days. 12 days to find $22,000 or disappear. Outside, Los Angeles woke up to another August morning, humidity thick enough to choke on, the kind of heat that makes poor people feel like they are being slowly baked alive. Isabella had $200 in her checking account. The thought made her want to laugh, but laughing required energy she did not have. She had worked 16-hour days for 3 years, sleeping in a converted closet, raising a child who was not hers as if she were, all while her abusive ex-boyfriend Derek Collins stalked her with the patience of a man who knew the police would not help. Derek had connections. Derek had friends with badges and silence. Derek had decided that Isabella belonged to him, and the law would look away. She stood slowly, her back cracking like dry wood. The apartment around her was all expensive furniture and empty rooms. Sophie Langford, Lily's mother, spent most of her time away, charity galas, country clubs, places where money talked and silence was purchased. Lily was asleep in the next room, age 6, with her mother's eyes and no idea that her world was about to collapse. Isabella pulled her hair into a tight bun, put on the black uniform that smelled like coffee and grease, and prepared for another 16-hour day at the diner on 6th Street. The rain had not come yet. The storm was building, gathering strength, and none of them knew how close the lightning was. Dominic Russo was 23 when his father was murdered. The killing was surgical, 3 bullets, a silencer, a body left in an alley behind the warehouse district. His father had been a soldier, a man who understood the rules and played by them. But rules were written by the powerful, and there were always more powerful men waiting to rewrite them. Dominic stood at the funeral in a suit that cost more than most people's cars, his mother Maria beside him in black so dark it seemed to absorb light. He did not cry. His father had taught him that tears were for the weak, and the weak did not survive. By age 30, Dominic owned half of Los Angeles. By age 40, he owned the other half. He built his empire on vengeance, on systematically destroying every person who had anything to do with his father's death. He spent 15 years becoming someone people feared to speak about, even in private, even in their homes with the doors locked. Marco and Enzo had been with him for 12 years, solid men who asked no questions and followed every order as if it were gospel. They had never seen him hesitate. They had never seen him afraid. They had certainly never seen him sit beside a broken woman and let her cry against his chest. But that was before the night when everything changed. That was before the rain came. The restaurant was called Isabella, upscale, Italian, the kind of place where a single bottle of wine cost more than Isabella's monthly rent. Dominic sat in his private booth in the back, away from windows, away from sight lines. His mother Maria was celebrating her 70th birthday, and despite everything he had built, despite every threat and every enemy, he protected her with a fierceness that bordered on obsession. She was the only soft thing left in him, the only remaining connection to the man he had been before ambition hollowed him out. The evening was humid, the kind of Los Angeles August that makes the air feel like it is suffocating you slowly. Dominic wore an open white shirt with the cuffs rolled back, revealing the gold watch his father had given him before he died. His suit was black, tailored, worth $30,000. His men stood outside, invisible, watching the perimeter. Maria smiled, and for a moment, Dominic was not the most powerful man in the city. He was just a son watching his mother laugh. Then the gunshots came. 3 men in dark clothes, faces covered, moved toward Maria with weapons drawn. They were professional, coordinated, the kind of move that took planning. Someone had sold him out. Someone had given up the location. Dominic's body moved before his mind could catch up, muscle memory and 15 years of survival instinct taking over. But he was blocked by the table. His mother was exposed. And then a woman stepped between them. Isabella Winters, still in her black diner uniform, apron soaked with spilled cocktails, placed her entire body in front of Maria Russo as if she weighed nothing, as if she mattered so little that she could afford to disappear. The first bullet caught her in the shoulder. The second in her ribs. The third in her stomach. The fourth in her thigh. She fell like a building collapsing, and as she fell, Dominic Russo felt something crack open inside his chest, something he had sealed shut 15 years ago when his father died. Marco and Enzo moved like ghosts, weapons drawn, the shooters dead before they hit the floor. Dominic was on his knees beside Isabella, pressing his hand against the wound in her stomach, feeling her blood hot and real and terrifying. Her eyes found his. She was trying to smile. "Is your mother okay?" She was dying, and she was asking about his mother. In that moment, the most dangerous man in Los Angeles became undone by a woman who had nothing left to lose. The hospital room was sterile, white, the kind of place where hope comes to die slowly. Isabella woke after 8 hours and 42 minutes of surgery to find a man in an open white shirt sitting beside her bed, asleep in a chair that probably cost more than everything she owned. Dominic Russo, the man whose mother she had saved, the most powerful man in the city, sat vigil over her like a ghost. When she moved, he opened his eyes. "Do not try to speak," he said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath. The surgeon removed the bullets. 3 of them missed vital organs by centimeters. "You are alive. You should not be, but you are." Isabella's throat felt like she had been swallowing glass. "Lily? Safe. In the care of my people. Derek. Gone. Permanently. You will not see him again." She wanted to ask how, wanted to ask what price had been paid, but the pain and the morphine and the sheer weight of 3 years of survival caught up with her all at once. She cried. Not the quiet tears of someone who was used to suffering in silence, but the kind of sobs that come from the moment when the weight finally becomes too heavy. Dominic reached out, let her fall against him, his hand steady on her back. Carlo and Enzo, standing in the doorway, exchanged a look neither had seen in 15 years. Their boss, the most dangerous man in Los Angeles, was holding a broken woman like she was made of something precious. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The conversation happened 3 days later when Isabella was strong enough to sit up without screaming. Dominic sat on the edge of her hospital bed, and what he told her was impossible. The eviction notice was void. He had bought the building. The $22,000 she needed was no longer relevant. Her guardianship hearing for Lily was scheduled for next month. His attorneys were handling it. Derek Collins and his accomplice Marcus were both facing 40 years in federal prison. Sophie Langford and her husband Richard were bankrupt, facing federal charges for fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. Everything she had fought for, everything she had bled for, had been solved in 5 days by a man she had just met. "You did all of this in 5 days." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I would have done it in 1 if you were not bleeding in a hospital bed." She looked at his hands, at the scar running from his temple to his cheekbone, at the intensity in his storm-gray eyes. "What do you want from me, Dominic?" He moved closer until she could feel his breath. "I want you to stay. I want to know what it feels like to protect someone instead of destroy them. I want to give you the life you deserve. And if you do not feel the same, I will walk away. But do not leave because you think you are not enough. You are everything." 6 months later, Isabella stood in front of the mirror in a brownstone that belonged to her, not borrowed, not temporary. Her hair was longer, healthier, her eyes no longer hollow. She wore a simple dress, cream-colored, chosen freely. Downstairs, Lily was drawing pictures and laughing at something Dominic said, calling him Uncle Dom, completely at ease. The building she had feared losing was hers. The child she had raised was legally hers. The future she had convinced herself was impossible had arrived like a miracle, quietly, without fanfare. At Terrazza Bella, the same restaurant where everything began, Dominic waited in his private booth. When Isabella entered, his mother Maria stood, took her hands, kissed her cheeks, and said in Italian, "You gave me my life. Now let my son give you yours." Dominic stood. Isabella took his hand. As they sat together in candlelight, the city spread beneath them, transformed. The most dangerous man in Los Angeles was no longer the most powerful thing in the room. He was just a man who had found something worth more than power. Derek Collins sits in a federal prison cell, counting the days of his 40-year sentence. Sophie Langford faces trial, her wealth and status and cruelty proving meaningless when confronted with the evidence of her crimes. Isabella Winters is no longer a nanny sleeping in a converted closet. She attends college classes in early childhood education. She is writing a book about her experience. She is visible now, real, no longer invisible. Lily calls her mommy, and the word breaks Isabella open every single time. This is the story of a woman who took for bullets meant for a stranger and woke up in a life she never imagined. This is the story of a man who spent 15 years becoming someone people feared, until a nanny with nothing taught him that the greatest power is not in taking a life but in choosing to save one. This is the story of how the invisible can become essential. How the powerless can transform those with the most power. How sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back. If this story moved you, if it made you believe in the possibility of change, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe because tomorrow we have another story about power, redemption, and love in the most unexpected places. Drop a comment below and tell us, have you ever helped a stranger and had it change your life? Every comment you leave is a source of strength that helps us continue creating these stories for you. We wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. No matter how hard life gets, remember this, after the rain, the sky clears. And sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We will see you again in the next video. Goodbye.